My name's Julie, and life has been really tough lately. Just 5 months ago, I walked away from what I thought was my forever love story. On top of that, my grandma is slowly losing herself to dementia, and it feels like everything is closing in on me. I was at work in the local library, trying to focus on putting books back on the shelves, but my mind was far away, thinking about Grandma. That's when my best friend Cheryl walked in, her face full of concern, like she was about to tell me something serious. "Julie, you look terrible," Cheryl said bluntly, standing with her hands on her hips. "Thanks, Cheryl. You always know how to lift my spirits," I replied, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "No. Seriously, Julie, this isn't good. You need help, someone to talk to, like a professional," she insisted, her gaze softening. I knew she was right. The sleepless nights and constant stress were wearing me down. So I sighed and said, "Maybe you're right. Do you know anyone?" She nodded eagerly. "Dr. Thompson. I've heard he's really good with cases like yours. I'll text you his info." I wasn't sure about opening up to a stranger, but something had to change. The very next day, I found myself sitting in Dr. Thompson's office. It was a cozy room with soft lighting and way too many diplomas on the wall. He was older, maybe in his late 50s, and had a calm presence that made the room feel a little safer. "So, Julie, tell me what's been bothering you," he began, his voice calm and reassuring. "Where do I even start?" I thought. "It's everything," I said, managing to get the words out. "I left my fiancé, my grandma is sick, and I just feel stuck." Dr. Thompson nodded, writing something down. "It sounds like you've got a lot on your shoulders. Let's work through it together," he said. As the sessions went on, I found myself telling him things I hadn't even admitted to myself. He never judged, just listened and sometimes responded with a gentle, or "I see." It felt like I was finally letting go of years of bottled-up fear and sadness. One day, after a session, I left his office feeling lighter than I had in a long time. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over everything, and I actually smiled, feeling a small flicker of hope. That night, as I was heating up some canned soup in my small apartment, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Dr. Thompson, reminding me about a follow-up appointment. I stared at the screen for a while. This guy was becoming my lifeline, and part of me hated how much I needed him. Days turned into weeks, and before I knew it, 3 years had gone by. When I first walked into Dr. Thompson's office, I finally felt like I could breathe again, without the weight on my chest. I even managed to laugh at a joke Cheryl made, and for the first time in a while, it felt real. During one of those lighter moments, my phone rang. The number was unknown, but I answered it anyway. "Hello, Julie, it's Dr. Thompson," the voice on the other end said. I was surprised. "Dr. Thompson? Is everything okay?" I asked, feeling a bit nervous. Yes, everything's fine," he reassured me. "I wanted to talk about your progress and maybe extend an invitation." "An invitation?" I repeated, now curious. "Yes," he continued. "I was thinking we could meet for coffee, outside the office. You've made a lot of progress, and I believe seeing things from a new perspective might help." I hesitated, biting my lip. This felt unfamiliar. "Isn't that against some kind of rule or something?" I finally asked. There was a brief pause. "Well, you're not my patient anymore. I just thought it would be nice to catch up in a more relaxed setting," he replied. Something in the way he spoke made me agree. "Okay, sure." "Coffee sounds nice," I said, ignoring the nervous flutter in my stomach. We met at a local cafe the following Wednesday. It felt strange seeing him outside the office, dressed in jeans and a casual shirt. He seemed like a regular guy, almost different from the professional I was used to. "You look well, Julie," he said with a warm smile as he greeted me. "Thanks, Dr. Thompson. I'm feeling better, too," I replied, tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. "Please call me James." "We're not in the office now," he said with a light laugh. I nodded, feeling a bit awkward. "Okay, James." Surprisingly, the conversation flowed easily. We talked about all sorts of things. He shared how much he loved hiking and how he always wanted to visit the Grand Canyon. I told him about my new hobby, painting, something I had started as a way to cope. As we sipped our coffee, he leaned in a little, his eyes serious but kind. Julie, I've watched you grow and overcome so much. You're incredibly strong, you know that, he said. I blushed, not used to such direct compliments. Thanks. I guess I had a good therapist, I replied with a small smile. He chuckled. Well, I can't take all the credit. You did the hard work. We kept talking, not even noticing as the cafe started to empty out. It was only when the waiter came to clean up that we realized how much time had passed. Looks like it's time to go, I said with a smile. I felt a twinge of disappointment as I said goodbye. James stood up and offered his hand to help me. Julie, I've enjoyed this more than I thought I would. Would you like to do this again? Maybe dinner next time? I hesitated, feeling a mix of excitement and caution inside me. But when I looked into his kind eyes, I found myself nodding. Yeah, dinner sounds great. Our dinners and casual meetups quickly grew into a full-blown romance. Before I knew it, James and I were inseparable. He was attentive, caring, and always there to help, especially with my grandma's situation. I thought I'd found the perfect person and that my life was finally turning around. But after the wedding, things started to change, or maybe I began to see his true self. It started small. He'd make comments about my friends like, "You're better off without them," or "They don't really care about you." At first, I brushed it off, thinking he was just being protective. But then it got worse. He became possessive, always needing to know where I was and who I was with. His control slowly took over every part of my life. He insisted that I quit my job, saying, "You don't need to work. I can take care of everything. Trust me, Julie." It wasn't about money for me. It was about freedom, having something that was mine. But still, I found myself agreeing, quitting my job, and becoming completely dependent on him. That had been his plan all along. Soon after, the isolation began. He'd check my phone, monitor my calls and texts. "Who are you talking to? Why are you laughing? Tell me," he'd demand, his eyes wild with a frightening intensity. "It's just Cheryl. You know her." I'd stutter, feeling like a child caught in a lie. "Cheryl, huh? She's no good for you. I don't want you talking to her anymore," he'd snap. It was crazy. I felt like I was losing my mind. One day, I couldn't take it anymore. I confronted him, my voice trembling but loud. "I can't do this, James. I can't live like you're my jailer. I need my life back." He just laughed, a cold, heartless sound that echoed through the house. "Your life, Julie? Your life is with me now. And if you even think about leaving, what about your grandma? Without me, she's out on the streets. Remember that." I was trapped. Every time I thought about standing up to him or leaving, the image of my sweet, confused grandma being thrown out of her care facility stopped me in my tracks. I was trapped in a web he had carefully created. Every move he made was designed to keep me under his control. The only peace I found was at night, when I could cry silently in bed, without him noticing. I'd lie there, the man I once loved snoring next to me, wondering how I ended up in this nightmare. How did the kind, caring man I married turn into such a monster? Looking back, I realized the signs were there all along: his need to control me, his disregard for my friends, and his push for me to quit my job. But I was blind, desperate for love, and now I was paying the price. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't keep living like this, or rather, barely living. But every time I thought about standing up to him, his threats about my grandmother stopped me in my tracks. It was a vicious cycle: fear, control, and complete hopelessness. I felt like I was fading, like a ghost in my own life. The independent, lively woman I once was had disappeared, replaced by someone who flinched at his voice and jumped whenever a door slammed. Our home felt more like a prison, with James as the warden, and his rules were the chains that kept me there. One evening, as we sat in what was supposed to be our cozy living room, the tension was unbearable. I tried to make myself small, hoping he wouldn't notice me, but it was no use. He was like a storm, ready to explode. Why don't you ever look at me when I'm talking to you? James snapped, his eyes narrow and angry. I flinched. I'm sorry. I was just thinking about something. I stammered. Always thinking, always in your head, he said, his voice growing louder. You're here with me. Remember that I'm your husband. His voice rose to a shout, and I quickly nodded, mumbling apologies, trying to calm him down. But it was no use. He was already in one of his moods, and there was no stopping him. You know what? I've had enough of your attitude. You need to learn, he said coldly, his voice calculated. Before I could react, he grabbed my arm, his fingers digging painfully into my skin. James, please, you're hurting me, I cried, fear washing over me. He dragged me toward the small storage room, the one place I feared most in the house. It was dark, with no windows, a tiny box of a room. Maybe some time in the dark will teach you to appreciate what you have, he hissed, shoving me inside. I stumbled, hitting the cold floor as he slammed the door, leaving me in complete darkness. My heart pounded, panic rising in my chest. I had always been terrified of the dark, and now I was trapped in it, alone and terrified. I once told James about my fear of the dark back when I thought he cared. James, please let me out. I'm scared of the dark, remember? I yelled, my voice shaking. His cruel laughter was the last thing I heard before his footsteps faded away. I was left alone, trapped in the darkness, the weight of my situation pressing down on me. I curled up in a corner, my body trembling as I cried. Time passed, but I couldn't tell how long it felt like forever. Every little creak and sound from the house made me jump, my mind creating monsters in the shadows. But the real monster was just outside the door, the man I had married. Finally, the door creaked open, a sliver of light breaking through the darkness. Have we learned our lesson? James's voice was full of mockery. I couldn't speak or even look at him. I just nodded, desperate to get out of that room. He pulled me up, his grip still firm, but not as painful. Good. Remember this feeling, Julie. Remember who's in charge here, he said coldly. As I stumbled back to the living room, my legs weak and my eyes struggling to adjust to the light, a deep sense of shame washed over me. How had I let it come to this? How had I become so weak, so controlled? But underneath the shame and fear, something else stirred anger. I was angry at him for treating me this way, but I was also angry at myself for allowing it. That dark room was a wake-up call. I couldn't live like this anymore. I couldn't let him crush the last bit of who I was. Amidst all the darkness in my life, a tiny spark of hope appeared. I found out I was pregnant. As I held the positive test in my hands, a wave of emotions rushed over me. Fear, uncertainty, but also a fierce, protective love. I hoped that maybe this baby would change things, maybe even soften James, bringing back the man I once loved. With my heart racing, I approached him that evening. James, I have something to tell you. We're going to have a baby. His reaction was immediate and terrifying. His face twisted, not with joy, but with anger. A baby? No, that's not happening, Julie. I stepped back, his harsh words cutting deep. But it's our child, I said, trying to plead with him. Maybe this could change things, make them better. He didn't care. His voice was cold as he spat out. No, Julie, it's going to change nothing. You're going to get rid of it. I felt a sudden surge of defiance rise up inside me. No, I won't do that. This child is part of me. In a rage, he grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin painfully. You don't understand, do you? You're mine. Everything you have is mine, your fears, your body, your future. I struggled, but James was too strong. James, please let me go. I begged, but he didn't listen. Instead, he dragged me to a small locked room at the back of the house, the one place I avoided at all costs. The room was dark, damp, and full of spiders, my worst fear. With a rough shove, he pushed me inside, and the door slammed shut behind me. The sound of the lock clicking felt like the end. My heart raced as I heard the spiders moving in the darkness. I was trapped, the tiny space closing in on me, and the terror of the spiders taking over. Let's see how long your maternal instincts last now, James taunted from the other side of the door. I screamed and pounded on the door, but it was no use. Hours passed in that dark, horrifying room, and my mind raced with fear for both myself and my unborn child. How could I bring a baby into this nightmare? Finally, the door opened, and James's silhouette appeared in the doorway, a smirk on his face. Well, have you thought it over? Are you ready to get rid of the problem now? I was weak, terrified, but still determined. Through my tears, I whispered, "No, that small act of defiance cost me. He left me there even longer, the spiders my only company." The last thing I remember was collapsing to the floor and fainting. When I woke up, I was in a hospital room, surrounded by the sterile white walls and the beeping of machines. I felt disoriented at first, but then the memories came rushing back. James, the spiders, the darkness. A shiver ran through me, but beneath all the fear, something else stirred, a fierce protective love for the tiny life growing inside me. I knew I had to act, not just for myself, but for my baby. As soon as I was alone, I quietly pulled out the phone I had hidden and dialed my cousin, Charles, who worked with the FBI. His voice was a lifeline as I whispered my story, every word a mix of fear and hope. "Charles, it's Julie. I need help." "It's James." My voice cracked, the reality of everything threatening to overwhelm me. "Julie, slow down. Tell me everything," Charles said, his voice calm and steady. I told him everything, each word lifting a little of the weight off my shoulders. His responses were professional, but I could hear the anger underneath. "Julie, listen to me. I'm going to help you. We're going to get you out of there, but you need to stay strong just a little longer."
"Can you do that?" he asked.
I nodded into the phone, making a silent promise to myself and my baby that I would hold on just a little longer. "I can, Charles. I have to," I whispered. "Good. I'm going to make some calls. We'll act fast." "Just hang tight and don't do anything to make him suspicious," Charles instructed. I agreed, holding on to the fragile lifeline of the plan he was forming. The rest of my hospital stay felt like a blur, doctor coming in and out, whispered phone calls, and every minute stretching into what felt like forever as I waited to be released. When the day finally came for me to go home, a heavy dread settled over me. The house, which once felt like a place of love and safety, now loomed like a monster. Its walls seemed to echo with all the screams and tears from the past months. James was there waiting for me, his presence dark and heavy, filling the room like a storm. I braced myself for what was coming, the confrontation I had been dreading but also preparing for. "Julie," James said, his voice calm in a way that made my skin crawl. "You're back. How is the hospital?" I kept my voice steady, hiding the emotions swirling inside. "It was fine. I'm feeling better," I lied, looking him in the eye with as much calmness as I could muster. He circled me slowly, like a shark sensing blood in the water. "Good, because we need to talk about the situation," he said, his eyes flicking down to my stomach. A sneer curled his lips. I clenched my fists, feeling the baby move inside me. "There's nothing to talk about. I've made my decision." James's face twisted with rage. "Your decision? You think you have a choice here?" I swallowed hard, but stood firm. "Yes, I do. This is my body, my child. I won't let you control me anymore." He let out a cold, humorless laugh. "Oh, Julie, you never learn, do you? I always have control. Always. But this time was different. I had a plan, a lifeline. I just needed to bide my time and play along until I could make my escape." "I'm tired, James. I'm going to bed," I said, turning to leave the room. He grabbed my arm, his grip tight like iron. "You're not going anywhere until we settle this." Just then, the front door burst open with a loud bang that echoed through the house. Police officers rushed in, their badges gleaming, their faces set with determination. "James Thompson, you're under arrest for the abuse and unlawful imprisonment of Julie Thompson," one of the officers announced, his voice cutting through the air like a knife. James's face turned pale, his grip on my arm loosening in shock. "This is ridiculous." She's my wife. She's lying, he shouted, but I wasn't alone this time. Charles stepped in behind the officers, his face filled with fury. No, James. You're the liar. We have everything, the recordings, the testimonies. It's over. James's eyes darted around, searching for a way out, but there was none. The officers handcuffed him, reading him his rights as he continued to protest, shouting denials and threats. As they led him away, he met my eyes one last time, his face a mix of disbelief and rage. But this time I didn't flinch. I didn't cower. I was finally free. I met his eyes without flinching, the fear inside me replaced by a strong sense of justice. After the chaos settled, Charles walked over, his expression soft. Julie, are you okay? I nodded, tears filling my eyes. Yeah, I think so. Thank you, Charles. Thank you for everything. He hugged me tightly, a warm, protective embrace. Always, Julie, always. The house felt strangely quiet after everyone left. James's shadow still seemed to linger in the corners, but for the first time, I felt peace. The confrontation had been terrifying, but it was the first step toward a new life for me and my child. The world seemed brighter, the air fresher. The chains of fear and control were finally broken, leaving room for hope and a new beginning. With James now facing the consequences of his actions, I could finally breathe and plan for the future. I moved back into my old apartment, and its familiar walls welcomed me. It needed some work, a bit of paint here, a new picture there, but it was mine. As I unpacked a box of old photos and memories, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to see Cheryl, her face lighting up with a wide grin. Julie, look at you. Free and glowing, she exclaimed. I laughed, the sound light and real.
Cheryl, come in.
I've missed you. We sat down, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, with a pot of coffee between us. So, what's the plan now? Cheryl asked, her eyes bright with excitement. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her question. First, I'm going back to work. I need to find my footing again. Then, I'll focus on being the best mom I can be. Cheryl reached over and squeezed my hand. You're going to be amazing, Julie. And if you need anything, you know I'm always here, right? I nodded, the lump in my throat making it hard to speak. I know, Cheryl. Thank you. As days turned into weeks, I found a rhythm in my new life. I returned to work at the library, where the books and quiet gave me comfort. My coworkers welcomed me back with open arms, their support reminding me that I wasn't alone. My pregnancy continued, and each doctor's visit brought a mix of nerves and excitement. Then, on a cool autumn morning, my son was born. Holding him in my arms, everything else faded away. He was perfect, a tiny beacon of hope and love. The legal battles with James were tough and emotionally draining, but I stayed strong, supported by Charles, Cheryl, and my legal team. In the end, justice was served. James was sentenced to spend years behind bars, his threats and control finally silenced. I received a settlement, a sum that ensured a comfortable future for my son, my grandmother, and me. But more than the money, it was the freedom that meant the most. I was no longer tied to a man who saw me as something to control. I was finally free. As my son grew, so did I. I learned to trust again, to laugh freely, and to love without fear. I made new friends, reconnected with old ones, and found joy in the small things. One day, as I watched my son playing in the park, a thought crossed my mind. We did it, little one. We're really doing it, I whispered, tears of happiness filling my eyes. He looked up at me, his little face lighting up with a big smile, and in that moment, everything felt perfect.